Hey everyone! Andrew Garfield is the only Spider-Man actor who didn't get a third movie. After Sony teamed up with Marvel, many of their projects were scrapped. While Garfield got a good run in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it would have been really interesting to see what Sony had planned for him. Sony had a lot of interesting and strange ideas for sequels and spin-offs. Today we will talk about them. What did Sony want to tell us in a solo Aunt May movie? What were their plans for the third and even fourth Spider-Man films? And is there any chance that The Amazing Spider-Man 3 will ever be made? Subscribe to my channel if you would like to see Andrew's return as Spider-Man. So let's begin our journey through Sony's cinematic universe. The Amazing Spider-Man, released in 2012, made $750 million worldwide. That's a lot of money, but the earlier Spider-Man movies from Sony made even more when adjusted for inflation. Amy Pascal, the head of Sony Pictures at the time, needed to find a way to boost the earnings of future Spider-Man films. According to Marvel's board, the success of the first Avengers movie gave Sony an idea to create their own universe. Sony then started planning solo movies for Spider-Man's side characters like Venom and Kraven the Hunter. Venom turned into a series starring Tom Hardy, and the Kraven movie is coming soon. Sony's plan was to have these characters team up in a Sinister Six movie. They also wanted to make a movie about Silver Sable and Black Cat, but later cancelled it. However, recent insider reports suggest that Sony still will not let Marvel use Black Cat in their films. Sony plans to include her in their universe with Morbius and Venom. Sony owns the rights to 856 Spider-Man characters, and during the Andrew Garfield era, they aim to use as many as possible. Sony even had a wild idea for a movie about Aunt May and Uncle Ben's adventures. It wouldn't show their everyday lives, but rather a spy story, featuring a young May. The movie's atmosphere was supposed to feel like the show Agent Carter. Rumor has it, the inspiration for the film came from a comic series called Trouble. It features young Ben and May, as well as Mary and Richard Parker. In the story, May has a child with Richard Parker and decides to give the baby to Mary and Richard to raise, keeping the real mother's identity a secret. Thankfully, Sony never started making this movie. In 2013, Sony announced that The Amazing Spider-Man 3 would come out in 2016, and The Amazing Spider-Man 4 would follow 2 years later. But first, they needed to release the sequel. Amy Pascal often sought advice from Kevin Feige, even though he wasn't involved in the production. Feige openly expressed his concerns about the project. The Marvel Studios head criticized the idea that Peter Parker became Spider-Man because of special blood, and called Andrew Garfield's performance inconsistent and emotionally disjointed. Amy Pascal shared her worries. In an email to Doug Belgrad, the former president of Sony Pictures, she called the choice of director and actors a mistake. Pascal also felt the movie was uneven and jittery, with no clear story. Alan Fine, a colleague of Kevin Feige, said he wanted to burn the script after reading it, finding the story too dark and depressing. The Amazing Spider-Man 2, released in 2014, made $700 million at the box office, which was $50 million less than the first film. After this disappointing result, Marvel saw a chance to collaborate with Sony. Kevin Feige organized a secret meeting with producers in Santa Monica to discuss the terms of the deal and potential Spider-Man movie storylines. Later, Feige personally met with Amy Pascal on the balcony of her office. At that time, Sony was planning The Amazing Spider-Man 3, and Amy wanted Kevin's advice. But Kevin had his own goal. He said he couldn't just give advice and leave. The only way he could help was to take over the entire project. Pascal didn't like his idea and angrily told him to get out of her office, even throwing a sandwich at him. Meanwhile, Marvel Entertainment's chairman, Isaac Perlmutter, was negotiating with Michael Linton, the chairman of Sony Pictures. These talks went more smoothly and without any foot throwing. Sony's executives were open to a deal, but Isaac Perlmutter set tough conditions. He said Sony would get only 50% of the revenue from solo Spider-Man movies. However, Sony would get only 5% when Spidey appeared as a guest character in other movies. Sony immediately rejected the offer. Amy Pascal changed the film release schedule. Now, Sinister Six was set for 2016, the third Spider-Man movie for 2018, and the fourth film was postponed indefinitely. But as we know, Sony and Marvel eventually came to an agreement, and Sony cancelled all 3 films. Sony had big plans for Spider-Man. Besides several sequels, the studio also announced a Sinister Six movie, with Drew Goddard set to write and direct. The team was supposed to include Vulture, Dr. Octopus, Mysterio, Sandman, Black Cat, and Spider-Man himself. Dr. Octopus was going to trick a grieving Spider-Man into joining the team. They were to travel around the world, searching for some Pandora's box. At one point, the Sinister Six and Spider-Man would visit the Savage Land in Antarctica. There, the team would battle an alien named Gog. There was also a planned scene where Spider-Man would ride a T-Rex. Towards the end of the movie, Peter would see the true nature of the team members and fight them. This film was meant to lead into The Amazing Spider-Man 3. Mark Webb was set to direct for the last time, and then act as a consultant for the fourth movie. In the third film, Webb wanted to bring back the Sinister Six. One of the new villains would be resurrected Norman Osborn, played by Chris Cooper, who was on TASM 2. The most interesting detail was the main villain. The movies with Andrew Garfield were the only ones to explore the disappearance of Peter's parents. As we know, they were hiding but eventually killed. Remember the mysterious man in the hat who visited Dr. Connors and Harry Osborn in prison? The writers intended him to be behind Peter's parents' death. His real name is Gustav Fierce, but fans know him as the Gentleman. Mark Webb planned to bring this character back in The Amazing Spider-Man 3, along with Norman Osborn. According to Webb, the Gentleman was to be the main villain and the leader of the Sinister Six. Michael Massey was expected to reprise his role as the character. You might think the movie already had too many villains, but the writers wanted to add another one. Paul Giamatti, who played Rhino in the sequel, said his character was supposed to appear in the third movie. Besides the villains, the writers wanted to introduce Mary Jane. As many know, Peter Parker's main love interest was supposed to appear in the second film. The role went to actress Shailene Woodley. They even filmed some scenes with her for The Amazing Spider-Man 2, but they were cut to keep the focus on Peter's and Gwen's relationship. Since Andrew Garfield signed on for 3 movies, it's not clear if his Spider-Man would have survived the third film. Garfield once said he wanted to pass the role to Miles Morales. However, Sony probably wouldn't have let go of the character so quickly, as they had already planned plots for a fourth movie. The actor who played Captain George Stacy shared interesting information about the cancelled film. He said that in the third movie, Peter was supposed to find a way to bring dead people back to life, with a special formula. His character was also set to return in the third film. According to leaked emails, Sony wanted to bring back Gwen Stacy in The Amazing Spider-Man 4, but she would have returned as Carnage. It seems Sony was planning to explore the Clone Saga in future films. They likely wanted to base this on the Ultimate Spider-Man comics, where Gwen also returns as Carnage after her death, and Peter later meets his father, who he thought was dead. In The Amazing Spider-Man 4, there is a deleted scene where Richard Parker finds his son. The news about Andrew Garfield's future Spider-Man isn't very hopeful. According to recent insider reports, Tom Holland's Spider-Man will face off against Venom, while Garfield will appear in other projects, like Avengers 5. However, after the release of No Way Home, talks about making The Amazing Spider-Man 3 has heated up again and still hasn't died down. Fans are even creating petitions demanding a third movie with Andrew Garfield. Additionally, Sony still plans to bring together the Sinister Six in their own universe. It's hard to imagine Sinister Six movie without Spider-Man. The release of Kraven the Hunter will make things clearer. Let's hope that Andrew's Spider-Man gets to face the Sinister Six. In any case, what would you like to see in The Amazing Spider-Man 3? But yeah, my dear viewers, click on the like button, subscribe to the channel and write what you think about it in the comments below. We'll see you soon.